Okay, everyone, welcome to episode 16 of the Everyday Ham podcast. I am James, K8JKU, joined here by Jim, N8JRD, and Rory, KNX, as always. So we got a little bit of a good show, I think, for you today. It's not necessarily all amateur related, so we're going to have a little bit of a nerd out. But before we get into that, just a quick reminder. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, you want to learn more, if you want to visit our YouTube channel, or go to our socials or Discord, go to everydayham.com. Also, we just posted a pretty good video. Is BG2FX building a new 50-watt radio? This is the maker of the FX4CR. So if you're interested in checking that out on YouTube, go right ahead to our main channel at Everyday Ham. So with that, we'll kick it off as always with a brief Around the Shack segment. Jim, why don't we start with you?
Well, good evening, gentlemen. And we find ourselves on the cusp of yet another human achievement this evening, which is really, really exciting. And I'm actually going to have some fun talking about Artemis with you guys here in just a moment. This one is going to be a little ham light today, but I do think this will be a really fun conversation, judging by the traction that we've gotten in the Discord and all of you guys that have met us in the Discord to talk about the moon stuff that is going on. So really, really exciting week here. It's been nice to have some optimistic information in the news, and it's been really fun to kind of dive back into that pulpy, science-backed information instead of all of the politics that have surrounded us for quite a few months now. So I really have been enjoying this sort of distraction right now. But around the shack here in the N8JRD space, it's been a quiet week or two. I admittedly have had quite a bit going on here in the life and office space. So I did turn off the radios last week and take a little break from everything. And honestly, I'm telling you guys that because I think that sometimes doing a little hard reset from the hobby can be a really healthy thing to do because you can come back and be excited about it again. And so this week, I turned my radio back on Sunday evening after I had taken a little break, and I'm talking about my VHF UHF rig. The HF rig's off most of the time unless I'm operating FT8 or chasing somebody on POTA, but turned it back on and started listening again, and it was nice to have a little reset period, right? Get some fresh space there. It let me focus on some other things that needed to be done, and I think finding that balance between the hobby and life is often a really healthy thing to do. But in classic N8JRD fashion, I got back on. I got back interested in radio, and then I bought a Xiegu G90 this afternoon. So,
Whoa, wait, that's actually news. You pulled the trigger because so those that don't know Jim, he will always share. He loves searching for bargains, and he will always share the bargain he finds on QRZ or Facebook Marketplace. You shared earlier the G90. I thought a link. I was working and I kind of missed it, but
it was deep. It was deep in the message that it was actually purchase. It was deep. You had to read it for comprehension. It was
I don't know for
I think I read it twice. I think I read it twice before I said, "Oh, that was a purchase."
Yeah, I don't know if we're proud of our G90 purchase or not, but I'm kidding. The G90 has been one of those things that's sort of been on the fringe radar for a long while for me as a really fun little radio to try out. And also, I have this vision where the G90 is more portable than my DX10 and my big battery and all the big and thin. What I have this vision of is it's like I'm going out for the day and I don't know if I'm ever going to have a chance to radio, but I could throw it in the back of the car with me, right? And I'll have a little 3-pound rig that does 20 watts. I know I can do sideband because I'm not a CW op yet. And I'm going to be a little wire antenna, probably a 9-to-1. That's what I'm thinking, a random wire because it has a great tuner. And the POTA 20 mast, right? So this is my ultralight vision for the G90, and that's kind of where I grabbed it. And I think it'll be a fun radio to play with, especially with a couple of neat camping opportunities coming up. I'm hoping to have it for Michigan QSO Party, which I'm sure Rory will talk about in just a minute.
And you don't need to say the price, but do you feel like you got a pretty good deal on it?
Oh, I'm always open on what I pay for things. I try to find the most killer deal possible on all the things. This one was a G90 on the QRZ this afternoon, and the gentleman listed it for $335, which for me, in the currently slightly inflated radio cost market, seems like a really fair option. I can remember KF8BW and Shane, our silent partner in the Everyday Ham. If you haven't heard of Shane,
Shout out Shane.
Yeah, shout out Shane. Bought the G90 at last Hamvention, and he got a really killer deal, close to I think 350, but he got a few things with it, including the
he got a
interface.
res antenna and some other things I think
Yeah,
with it
so
as well, which was
he
a killer
got-
deal.
Yeah, he got some real nice deal on it. So there have been cheaper G90s sold, but at 335 seemed really fair in the market. It was a brand new in the box type of thing where the guy pulled it out because he wanted a POTA. I think he was 71 years old, I believe he said, and he just decided that he wasn't going to take it out and do it in the field. So it was a good opportunity to get a never used or lightly used G90 that I can play with. I'll upgrade the firmware when it comes, and we'll try to build out the ultralight portable kit. And being very honest, guys, I will say this, and I think this is an upcoming topic. I have not been doing much POTA lately. I've been more interested in running the radio in different ways, and so I don't know if it's going to see a ton of POTA, but I do like the idea of being able to take it out with me in the field and just run HF radio wherever I'm at. So, well, we'll see where it goes. But Rory, what's up with you in the shack?
Nothing new in the shack. No purchases here. I think your purchase there, Jim, is an exciting one. I've always enjoyed that radio. I had a chance to be hands-on with Shane's last year at Cedar Creek Campground after he purchased it. Very impressed by it for its size, price, and the whole package. I think it'll be fun to play with. You know, we always talk about this. Why do you POTA or why don't you POTA?
Right.
And sometimes it's the ease of the setup. For example, my purchase of the ATOS now 2 years ago, I POTA a lot more. All I have to do is go pull up and get on the air when I have an hour to spare. If I want to spend my lunch at work, the past weekend we had a bunch of new parks pop up on the list in Michigan. I went and did one of them just because it was easy enough for me to get in and get out. The easier you have your POTA setup, the more inclined you are, I think, to do it on a whim, where it doesn't take a whole lot of setup planning. I got to get this and that. It's just easier to do. So I think your thought on having that in the kit for a quick, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't activation is an excellent plan. In my shack, however, still enjoying, and everyone probably saw the video a couple weeks ago where Shane and Jim were over here helping me get helping me. They were doing all the work, getting my antenna up in the tree. And I've been exceptionally pleased. Of course, I'm going from a very low performing attic and fed antenna to an antenna that's outside. So, you know, you have a little bit of improvement just by getting the damn thing outside. But I've been impressed, especially 40 meters, which is, you know, I like a lot of 40 meter times. So it's been performing well. I did hit my DX100 on QRZ. I have 100 countries confirmed finally on QRZ. I don't have it on DXCC yet for ARRL. I'm still 6 away there. But that's gone up, I believe, 8 or 9 just since that antenna's gone outside.
Nice.
So that's the big improvement. So I really appreciate the support and help and encouragement of getting that up and having me get off my behind and actually doing something. So very good on that. It's QSO Party season. Of course, I'm not a huge contester, but I enjoy contests. Last weekend we had I'm blanking now. Mississippi and Louisiana. Not a whole lot in the log, but was able to get on the air and get a few of those on phone and on CW. So that was cool. This next weekend is going to be a very busy QSO Party weekend. We have New Mexico, Missouri, Georgia, and North Dakota QSO parties all this coming weekend. So, of course, hoping to get a few contacts in all of those and have to go through and read the rules and see what the nuances are between them and make sure I have everything ready to go. But looking forward to that. The weekend after that, however, is Michigan QSO Party weekend, and I'll be down in Lenawee County at Lake Hudson State Rec area. I'll be out there camping. It'll be first trip for the new camper.
Nice.
Looking
Fingers
forward
crossed
to that.
The weather gets a little warmer for you.
We're hoping it gets warmer so I can, use water. That's important. But
we woke up with snow on the ground here on the 7th day of April.
2 mornings in a row with snow on the ground. I'm not for that, but that is what it is. So looking forward to that. And I have CW in the toolbox this year, which I've not had before. So I'm looking forward to bumping that score up a bit. I don't think I'm at a point where I'm going to be calling CQ and having people come at me with their calls, but I'll definitely be searching and pouncing CW operators for the QSO Party. Hopefully I can get closer to a full sweep for for counties this year, which I've not done before. So looking forward to all those things. Certainly also that weekend is also shares QSO Party with Ontario on Saturday and Quebec on Sunday. So I'll be participating in those as well. It'll be a busy radio weekend, but looking forward to it. For the Everyday Ham folks, we have, of course, don't forget, I always encourage people the Discord. I enjoy the Discord. I enjoy it's like I tell people, it's small but it's mighty. It's a fun group of people on there. Don't come by looking for 24 hours a day worth of conversation. You're not going to get that.
Yep.
But you're certainly going to get the morning crew. You're going to get a handful of people that are all over the place, and certainly getting to know each other. We've had a chance to meet a handful of people in person when we were down in Florida, and the same will happen in Dayton here in a little over a month. So that's coming up quick. But shout out to one of our newcomers there, Steve KF8 DYB. He's been in the morning chat and giving some perspective on things every day. Look, I enjoy him. I hope to meet him someday, and maybe some others too, maybe down at Dayton. We'll see where people show up, and they'll find us with our pig hats, and always say hello, because you'll end up getting a pig sticker. That'll be from Jim, because he remembers to take his with him. I never do. So
there may be a special edition Dayton pig sticker coming.
So you're saying it, so that makes it a thing. You don't want to let people down. You don't want to let me down, because I want one.
Oh, see, well, there you go.
But that's what's going on in the shack and around town in general. James?
So I've just got back from Hawaii, where I did get a chance to do some POTA. I'm still a little bit of jet lag, so if I mispronounced YouTube in the opening there, bear with me. For some reason,
you did also manage to omit my prefix on my call sign, so I'm just KNX. So I'm just KNX 1070 News Radio Los Angeles. So we let that be, but that's fine.
Whiskey 8 KNX.
I'm all about KNX, so that's fine.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So I did get a chance to get out there and activate. I did 2 parks between the family time. The solar conditions improved just in time for me to do some sideband as well as some digital. I did learn some things, and I know a lot of amateur radio operators that have years of experience are going to look at me and go, well, yeah, duh. However, my two main takeaways. The value of a directional antenna when you're in a remote setup or area.
Sure.
That would have definitely been handy. I was using the Pactenna and my 17-foot vertical. But, you just a little bit of patience. And then the other thing was my battery setup. So typically, we live in the Midwest, as everyone probably knows by this point, in the Michigan area. We're pretty prime and center for a lot of activities here. So, if I go out to a park and I start calling CQ, usually I'll get my 10 in a pretty reasonable time span.
Right.
20, 10 minutes, nothing dramatic. However, when you're remote, that time scale shifts pretty dramatically to the amount of QSOs you're getting and the time between QSOs. So my battery management definitely was maybe not what I expected. So I kind of had to learn to charge and just have a little bit more patience in my expectations. So again, I'm sure a lot of people, that's pretty common sense at this point, but hey, yeah, you live and you learn, and these are the things I'm learning as I go through this journey here.
Was there a Walmart stop to get the part you needed on the Hawaiian island?
So what I learned is normally I'll take my LiFePro.
Well, you don't have your own car. So.
No, I don't have my own car, but I'll take my mobile charger that has the cigarette outlet plug, for those that are familiar with that terminology, into the 12-volt there adapter, and I'll plug it in, and I'll charge my LiPo battery while I drive around to parks, or I'm commuting for the day on whatever adventure we're at with the family. Sure. However, the rental car I had, which was a brand new Tahoe, very nice car, does not have the cigarette lighter port. They have only AC outlets. That's all they have. No option.
Interesting.
So I went on the old Amazon to see if I could buy something. Of course, shipping to a hotel is never convenient, nor shipping anything to Hawaii is convenient.
Yeah.
So I had to try to make a stop at a Walmart. Also, shout out to Shane, who was doing the find in store search for me. So thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Basically, got two clamps that you can go on the battery with the female adapter for the AC plug, so I could just sit inside like a weirdo with my battery, charging my hood up, clamped on, and charging a LiPo battery. I'm sure people were definitely wondering what I was doing. But it worked. So, hey, that's a win. I got my battery charged, and I got back out there, and I was able to complete the second park. I'm also heading out to Arizona this weekend. So the New Mexico QSO Party is maybe a 40-meter option for me here in the future, as if I can get some time in the evening. So if you don't have me in your ham alerts, put me in there. I think I'll be activating there. It's probably going to be on a Sunday, and I'm going to try to activate the Grand Canyon and a couple other parks in the area and see what I can do. And that's really what I've been up to. And then I think I'm off to Europe again as well for work. So busy travel schedule. So please, everyone, bear with me if I am slurring my words.
Hawaii, the Grand Canyon, and then Germany, all back to back. It sounds
Actually,
like you're living the
Germany,
dream. Then.
Poland, France, and Italy all in a week. So
Yeah,
we're
you're gonna be
doing
done.
things.
So back to Hawaii for a second. So I someday there'll be a Hawaii activation for me. I'm guarantee it. But so what did you experience with other DX that you wouldn't have normally gotten? I know, of course, it's significantly further west geographically. Where was your signal getting? Did you get any surprises or things you didn't realize you would get while you were there?
Yeah. So working sideband, where FT8 definitely a flood to Japan. So the time of day I was activating, Japan was online. Normally when you're in Michigan, I'm home in the shack here, and I see a Japan station and I have a decent signal report and I can try to work them. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we're pretty much only gray line 12 or 15
Gray line,
meters.
yep.
Yeah, that's about the only way I get Japan.
Flooded with Japan on FT8, and I was very excited for that because that's not a normal experience. Got Indonesia on sideband. I got some of the islands near Australia in the Polynesia there. Australia on sideband, a park to park with Australia, which is pretty cool.
Was that a new entity for you then in the log for POTA park to park?
Was a new entity for park to park for me in the
That's
log.
always
Only
fun.
my second sideband Australia too.
That's
Contact China, which was exciting for me as well. The Philippines. So definitely working more of that Pacific and Asia region, which was honestly very exciting. And just learning to hear the calls was pretty fun to see and hear. So I enjoyed it.
It's the listening to the calls, especially on phone, is a little different. If you look back to my activation out in Malibu at Point Doom there, and I was listening to the Japanese station, it was difficult. It's just because our ears aren't trained. It's hard enough on sideband with a weak signal, but our ears just aren't trained to hear those accents over the air. So it could be a challenge. But that's cool.
I had to do the I'm sorry, can you please repeat?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
A couple
Pronunciation and the way that letters sound in different languages is always a challenge. I find that even when I talk to some of the European Italian stations, and the way that there are, and French stations for sure.
Right, and add the noise of sideband, add some, noise on the signal in there, and you're having a hell of a time. But that's cool. I'm glad. China's a fun one. I don't have China in my log at all still, so that's exciting. So
I was at South Korea. A few South Korean stations, which was also very exciting. One FT8, a couple sideband, so that was also very exciting. So a lot of new entities for me. Hopefully I get some more DXCC here crossed off shortly. I had to request the new certificate and LOTW to basically get the Hawaiian DXCC set up. And then I just sent those logs over recently. So thank you, everyone. By the way, I really do appreciate. I'm sure not a lot of those people are listening to this podcast, but thanks. I appreciate it.
I tried.
You found James on the Hawaiian island.
Yeah. So I'll see. But I think the Grand Canyon has a little bit more push into the Michigan region. So hopefully I'll be able to work everyone here and the club members here shortly. So with that, let's push into our main show topic. So this is really just going to be a nerd fest. So again, I apologize for all the people that tune in for that hardcore digest of amateur radio here, but we are talking Artemis.
They're going to the moon again.
4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
So we have sound clips now, folks.
Soundboards are live. I love it.
So we all know, I'm sure at this point, for all the ham radio operators out there, I'm sure we're all a little bit nerdy here, but we are going back to the moon with Artemis II, as Jim mentioned. So this is the first time that since Apollo 17, 1972, that we have traveled back to go around the moon. We also broke the distance record for manned space travel. That happened yesterday, right? April
Last night.
6th.
Yeah.
Yeah, around 2 p.m. Eastern time, as the crew was awarded that new achievement, which is also very fantastic. And they're on a 10-day journey, and they're testing out a whole bunch of new things. They're getting a lot of new shakedowns of the Orion capsule, which is probably some fun topics we can talk about here in a second.
Yeah, let's just get it out of our system.
Yeah.
The toilet didn't work. It's
No.
been broken. It's come back online. There's a lot of toilet conversation. We've had
They're
fun
still-
with it.
They're still having to make sure it's working before they use it every time. I mean, there is a lot of toilet discussion for sure.
If I remember correctly, they had a floater, or whatever they were calling it. They had a smell or a weird odor that was coming from what they assumed was the toilet. They had general malfunction of the toilet. And this is maybe a technology since the Apollo mission we didn't need to improve. I think maybe we're going back to the vacuum bags or whatever other tool they had in the past.
There was an excellent quote on the level of disgust that the astronauts had with the previous method of waste disposal on the long missions, and so this was a real creature comfort improvement, I think, from the NASA side to make it more welcoming, and also I think human condition has to be stated as so important when you're on a 10-day mission in the vacuum of space, right? Yeah. Your mind has the ability, and these folks are vetted, right, to be able to do this and be so focused. But it's something that's extremely difficult on the mind. And so when you can come up with these creature comforts, we're joking about the toilet, but it is one of those things that's really important because it's a human necessity that makes the comfort level higher so that you can focus on those other things. You know, when you're distracted on a project by something that is bugging you, it causes your project to suffer. And I think that's exactly why we see the toilet as a big kind of improvement on this particular mission.
Well, even though it's an improvement, I'm sure I was thinking about that just as the general concern for them. I mean, with knowing that it's not working properly, I mean, sure, they're going day to day doing their job up there, and that's a concern to them of, when it's time to go down the hall, it's is it working or is it not working? And I'm sure that weighs on them. It's a whole, kind of like you alluded to, it's a whole psychological test, I think, to even be in those conditions, being in the capsule for that 10-day period, very close quarters. I've been thrilled to see this HD video, this high quality video we're seeing from it. It's been so much fun to sit here. I've sat here in the living room not watching anything but that a couple of the nights that they've been up there, and it's just been excellent to watch. But to be in those tight quarters and have those what we think about is probably a minor malfunction, I'm sure it weighs on them up there of whether that's a concern or not, among all the other stressors of getting the job done. So
yeah, I think we've gotten to a point why I'm so excited about this, right? We're pushing new space boundaries. I feel like space travel, this is, by the way, for the astronauts out there, I realize this is a really maybe sad take and not true, but it's become comfortable, right? Like it's not thrilling, or people don't view it as dangerous anymore, which is absolutely not the case. They are working 24/7 to stay not only alive, but to keep that ship going where it needs to go. So if you have to also worry about your toilet, because what we learned in second grade is everyone poops, and it's one less thing that you don't need to deal with. So it's pretty interesting.
I know I've done more reading on bathroom use in space than I've ever anticipated in the last couple days. So, but you learn something new, I suppose. It gives you something to learn about.
One final thing to note here on toilets, and then we'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
This mission does not recycle the urine into potable water, unlike the ISS experience, by the way. So they are jettisoning the urine into space in this case, and the hard or solid fecal matter is being packaged up and brought back. So this is also a new development there if you're comparing it to the ISS, where they're in space for long periods of time and needing to deal with similar things. The ISS, of course, also has a toilet. So as an awareness statement there. But it's a really interesting thing that you just said, James, that I want to double back on, which is the idea that space became boring somewhere around the 70s. We had a rapid succession of missions to the moon, and the idea that men could go to space and land on the moon somehow became rapidly normalized, which is kind of unbelievable if you think about it. And with the long departure from the last mission to this one, I think that we've really come to understand that that was never the truth, right? They were on the bleeding edge of sending those folks to the moon with computer power that is rivaled today by significant amounts and margins, right? So when we look at that, that to me is such a interesting take on it. This is always going to be experimental. We talk about aviation in today's space where planes have to be vetted for thousands and thousands of hours before they can carry passengers. You don't have that opportunity in space. Every one of these missions goes up, and we've had, 7 or so, that are trying to go to the moon this way. Every one of these is experimental, right? There's no opportunity to vet them at the level, and we're doing everything that we can to make that. But all of these are high-risk missions, and they are all going to continue to be a challenge. So I'm glad to see us going back out into the deeper space and really experimenting. I had made a comment, and I wonder if this will resonate with anybody that's listening out there. As an 80s baby, I'm a 1984 born child. My vision of space was always the shuttle, right? I had never seen a live moon mission. They had all happened before I was born. And so my vision of space was always that we went to space. And of course, in my child brain, I assumed that the shuttle could go to the moon. But that was never the case. That was always a very close orbit vehicle that never had the intention.
Payload delivery and science missions.
That's right.
Basically its purpose. Yep.
So the idea that the shuttle could go to the moon, that was like impossible, right? And so when I saw the Artemis capsule sitting back on the pad in this launch, it was really something that made me reflect. It's strange to see a capsule rather than a shuttle, right? For me, because that's what I grew up understanding space to be. And I think it's really interesting. To put it in perspective, the space inside the capsule is the size of 2 minivans, essentially parked butt to butt. Right?
Yeah.
So that's how much space you have to float around in there, and it's a highly reconfigurable space too.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I found really interesting, actually. They were showing the diagrams of it in the launch configuration with the chairs and everyone sitting there and the console mounted up in the top. And then you watch the live NASA video. By the way, if you have not been watching the NASA live feed, you are missing out. It's on YouTube,
awesome.
NASA.gov, all the different things. Netflix even had actually a really nice stream going when they were approaching the moon. So a lot of great places to check it out. But you see it in the different configurations throughout the day. They'll even bring out the chairs and lay them flat, and they'll rope stuff off. And they have the workout station now as well.
That's right.
It's fascinating compared to what you saw in the old Apollo missions and the film footage inside those cabins. Way to just science and take the advantage of that space that you have, I guess.
We have learned some things between then and now.
Well, and you raised a good point too, Jim, that you mentioned the technology that was there. So we know the Apollo missions, I think it's 4 kilobytes of memory is what the guidance computer had before, famously. And now they are running basically a lot more power. We have in our cell phones and our ham radios way more memory capabilities now that just in our daily lives. But one thing I found interesting as well, just to play you one more sound clip here as well.
I also see that I have 2 Microsoft Outlooks, and neither one of those are working. If you want to remote in and check Optimism on those 2 Outlooks, that would be awesome.
Oh, boy.
All right, we will join in on your PCD, and we'll let you know when we're done.
And that stands for personal computer device. Just interesting. The whole new space challenges, not to rag on Microsoft, but of course Microsoft Outlook doesn't work.
I mean,
especially
who
in
would have
space.
thought you'd ever have to call the help desk for IT support from space? That's cool in its own way, but frightening in a different way. I think on the technology front as well. If you look at, and there's been a few of these photos side by side of mission control, of the earlier mission control that we all remember from the earlier missions and even the early historic missions where it's all console based and very, very rigid with a rather low definition large screen at the front of the room. And then now you're looking at all these people working at their workstations. It almost, I mean, not to minimize it, almost looks like my desk here or at work.
Right.
But just the leap in technology from back then to now and what they're able to do real time, it baffled me. I mean, and that was one of the things I didn't read up about it too much until they were in progress. But to learn a little bit about the technology of the transmissions of data and voice between Earth and space, the ability, the stuff they're able to send back and forth with video, data, audio, it baffles my mind because it's just so nice to have. And I'm sure it's going back to the the sanity of the crew. I'm sure it's nice that they have a few of those comforts of home with the technology while they're up there. I'm sure they're not browsing YouTube at night, but I'm sure having that constant contact, except for the 41 minutes they were around the backside of the moon last night.
That's right.
They were it's been good contact. I did ask, and then we'll move on. I asked a few people this thought: the 41 minutes that they were no radio contact. Who was that scarier for? Do you think? Do you think it was scarier for the people up there, or the people down on Earth? What's your thoughts on that?
Go ahead, James.
I would guess the ground crew, because those guys up there are just watching the views as they spin around.
They're working.
checking
They're
the computer.
doing.
They're working hard, and they're just snapping photos and doing all the things. The ground crew, with that LOS, loss of signal, that I learned from all the streams I've been watching, they're just hoping that crew comes back around and everything's okay. And you're anxiously waiting for that signal to be regained. So.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. The general level of control from the ground of the craft itself is so high that it being disconnected from many of the ways that it's being guided, the way that it's being trimmed and all that type of thing. I'm sure that the computer on board is able to handle all those things and carry along the package, but it had to be very nerve-wracking until that thing came back out of the shadow to know that things had went the way that we expected it to. There certainly weren't little green men on the other side waving as we went by, but I imagine I imagine it was still something to be in that shadow.
I would have thought that the ground people would have been very nervous, but then I was watching the feed of mission control during that 41 minutes, and you see people coming in with their carry out bags, and everyone was going out, and see people were talking, and
That
someone
was the
had
break.
someone right. They were just they were on.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
I'm sure they were very busy. Okay, but it sure looked like they took that 41 minutes to. But I'm sure that gave them a little healthy disconnect from actually being focused and watching the timer go by for that 41 minutes. So
why that was all happening too, they kept mentioning the updates to the deep space network for the communication arrays they have, which, by the way, we're not going to go into much detail, but if you love amateur radio, I think you'll love a good Google of the deep space network.
yeah, it's
and
been
checking out the
fascinating to read
facilities.
about.
So for those that don't know, it's a worldwide network of spacecraft communication, and they separate it into three main facilities that are always trying to triangulate with the spacecraft, especially designed for the deep space. So there's one in California, Australia, and Spain. And they're always aiming their antennas at the craft and basically just relaying a bunch of information. And the Google here is, you probably go, oh, well, yeah, well, that was around during the Apollo missions. Yes. However, they've made a lot of really significant updates to that system, especially in terms of the bandwidth that it can accommodate for all the different data we're seeing.
I've got you on this one. I'm excited to talk about it because this is actually where I was hoping we would head. Because this is very radio adjacent, right? S-band communication, like you said, with Deep Space Network has been around for a long time. Its maximum data rate is 6 megabit a second, and that's in an optimal configuration with the perfect radio setup, right? And so oftentimes we're not hitting optimal comms. And this is the first mission that has taken it to the next level with this O2O system that was jointly developed with MIT's Lincoln Lab and NASA. And it's a 20-year development project between the two to test multiple iterations of the system. And this is one of the first that has had what is conceivably a high bandwidth broadband connection from deep space back to Earth. When, of course, the lasers are able to see one another, right? There's a transmitter and a receiver, as with all optical communication means. And the theoretical maximum speed was 260 megabit per second, which is extremely rapid and would allow for 4K data to be streamed back from the craft. And I've heard, and I'm sure if you've been following any of this, there's a lot of strange comments that have showed up in multiple feeds and multiple comments under all the things going on of doubters of us doing the science that we're seeing humans do in this day and age. And, why are the pictures not better? And why did it look better in 1970 than it looks today? There's a lot of really strange comments being made, and I think that you really have to dig far deeper to understand the absolutely crazy limitations that they're working around and the amount of things that need to be transmitted back and forth between the crewed capsule and the mission control on the ground, right? It's if every megabit of data was able to be high-resolution video, I'm sure they would love to send back lots of great pictures. But there's a lot of data that needs to come back, right? Crew health telemetry, craft health, all the different things are coming back from this thing constantly, and we're uploading at the same time new mission directives, updated mission guidelines. There's so much data flowing back and forth that we do have to carve out space to send back those cool marketing screenshots that everybody really appreciates. This morning I woke up to the Earth set over the side of the moon. That is an epic picture, one that I'm sure will be on the internet and go down in history as one of the coolest things that comes back from this mission. And that's the reason, guys, right? Like, there is limited bandwidth. So O2O, a really groundbreaking way for them to communicate back. And to give you a little detail here, your uplink from Earth is 20 megabit nominal. Your downlink is where you get all this additional speed. And so it's really interesting to see that they have actually a much thicker pipe for downlink speed, which does allow them to send more of this type of data back. And there's a 1-watt infrared laser mounted on the craft. So you have to think about power being a major factor in this, right? If power was no object, right, you could put a huge laser on there, and sure, I'm sure you could have a huge pipe, but you have a craft that has a limited amount of power. That's why those solar panels are out. That's why the batteries are being charged. And so we have to make sure that all of that is budgeted for. So we have a 1-watt infrared laser sending back to ground stations, which are able to transmit at 40 watts back up to the craft. And those 4 lasers on the 40-watt output side of it, and they're located in White Sands, New Mexico, and the Mountain Facility in JPL, California. So there's 2 spaces, which means that they're not always able to use this system, right? Because we, unlike the Deep Space Network, don't have them distributed around the globe like those other systems. So these are probably less available, I think, than some of those other systems. But it's a really, really exciting thing to dig into. If you have a few moments, go check out the O2O system. There's an absolutely excellent presentation on how they developed it and some of the interesting actual radio technology that's being used to encode the data coming back and forth between the ground and the spacecraft itself. And if we said that 260 was the maximum, do you guys want to guess what the actual nominal data is that they're using to send back from the craft right now?
260 is optimal.
260 is maximum. Best case
260 is
scenario.
maximum. Yeah, I'm gonna. Oh God, 160 is what I'm gonna probably guess.
What do you think, Rory?
5.
All right. Well, you guys are at both ends of the spectrum here. $1, Bob. It is 80 meg. So they're getting about 80. Okay. So it's actually still much faster than you would expect.
Yeah.
260 is best case scenario. And one of the things that you have to dig into, you go into these documents, it's absolutely mind boggling. The laser itself gets hot as you transmit for long periods of time at high bandwidth, right? And so cooling that becomes another challenge of that thing. Now in space, of course, we've got the advantage of space being generally cold, but down here on Earth, right, cooling those big high power lasers can be a thing too. And thankfully on Earth we have a lot of power, but very interesting topic. And I think that that was one of the things that I really had to dig into, because I saw some very short-sighted comments that were like, why aren't they using cell phones? Why aren't they just using the global positioning system?
Because you're past it.
Let's be clear. Those only exist here in the magic of Earth.
So I had to turn off the on a lot of those YouTube feeds, turn off the chat on the side, because I mean, really, kind of like a conversation we were having before we started. Turn your brains on. I mean, come on, think about what you're doing.
There's a lot of NASA has been extremely. I think this mission is really, really cool to see them back publishing a lot of really interesting information, taking advantage of the high visibility of this mission to help educate folks and get folks interested in STEM.
They really are. I've been following, their feeds and their presenters, their communications team, the amount of videos and clips and all the things they're posting for free, public distribution on their website. Amazing. High res. Check it out. I think, Jim, you raised another good point, though, too, when we talked about the skeptics or things that people were like, well, why does it look different? The blue marble photo was another one.
Yep.
So they
straight out of Hollywood, right?
Yeah, straight out of Hollywood, and the flat earthers were probably pissed. So if you remember, the blue marble photo is the bright Earth at at past going out distance where you can see the full Earth sphere and circumference, and they snapped that beautiful photo in the 70s, and it's bright and it's vibrant and everything. And then the photo they took this time, everyone's like, well, the Earth is dying, because it was a
It's got
a little bit
haze.
more gray, a little more hazy. Obviously, saw a different continent than when it was captured before. And NASA had to come on and say, well, there's a couple factors. A, this is a much better camera now than we're taking it with, so
Right.
it's not color corrected or graded. This is a high res photo. The other thing is, well, the sun's positioning is also different between when the photo A and photo B were taken. Photo A had the sun directly, basically hitting it, and photo B has it a little bit more to the side and back. So, it was still a beautiful photo when you look at it, but everyone was also freaking out, which got me on the other tangent I went on is tech adjacent here for a second, is the
Okay.
camera system. Because then I started thinking, well,
Sure.
they got all these cameras and live video feeds outside extended on the solar arms. What cameras are they using and how is this happening? And then they started talking about it as the Integrity craft got a little bit closer to
Yep.
the
They were
moon.
on the radio.
Yeah, yeah, and then so basically what they have, which is interesting, is 28 cameras that are GoPros. So they have them mounted on the exterior. They have them mounted on the interior. So I guess shout out GoPros, just a consumer grade normal camera that's now in space. So
Yep.
good on you. Their astronauts also have access to iPhones. So they're using those for just kind of their own personal use, not connected to the internet or cell phone networks or anything like that. But that was another thing I saw in the conspiracy because the iPhone was on the camera and I was like, oh, they're calling their family. No, they're there for taking photos and videos and those type of elements. But then the really interesting thing was they were talking about the main cameras they're using for the moon photos.
Yeah.
And it's a Nikon D5. And I had to look this up because everyone on the side chat was, well, why? It's a 10-year-old DSLR camera. And they said they chose it because basically it has proven radiation resistance. So they knew it would perform and work.
Very
but-
interesting.
Yeah, but you're getting a lot of really good photos from some good, reliable technology, I think is the takeaway there.
The one thing I'll say on the D5, and then Rory has a thought here, is you also mentioned the D5 being 10 years old at this point, right? A lot of the DSLR cameras from that time period are so battle tested in various very challenging environments, not only wars, news photography and all that, but also these cameras have extreme high ISO performance. And when we're talking about working in the vastness of space where there's a lot of lack of light, that high ISO can help bring up detail from the dark. And so really interesting to hear that was the choice. I'm sure somebody had a very specific job of identifying the photography equipment that was going to fly on Artemis, and that was a heavily weighed decision. So I'll be really interested to see what more we get when the memory cards come back off the craft. But I'll be honest, some of the marketing folks that have published the images even today, they're doing a bang-up job of selling me on the idea of going to the moon in the future. Rory, go ahead.
Yeah, you hit on most of my comments there. But you also, when you mentioned memory cards just now, there was a brief back and forth between the crew and the ground trying to establish naming convention of certain things that they and I said, well, there's a problem they wouldn't have had on previous missions. But
That's right.
yeah, you hit on the technology of the camera equipment. I think I 100% agree on your comments there. It's just another one of those things that they're going up there to do a certain task and it just has to work. So there's no room for a whole lot of maybe find something newer, whatever the case might be. And I'm sure there's also probably a certain amount of time this crew spent on the ground with that photo equipment, to be familiar with it too. So there's a lot at play there, a lot at risk because photos are, there's a lot of science going on this mission, but photos are up there with one of the things they've got to deliver on. And I think they made a good move on that.
So maybe as we transition here, there are a couple ham-related segments that go with the Artemis as well. So I'm sure by this point, the amateur radio community is well aware of the 4 astronauts that have traveled on Artemis, 3 of which hold amateur radio licenses. So Reed Wiseman, KF5LKT, Victor Glover, KI5BKC, and Jeremy Hansen, KF5LKU, very close to JKU. I'll just give myself a little plug. So we're happy to see them up there in space and continue that proud amateur radio astronaut trend that we love so dearly. I'm also curious too. I know they are testing. I learned more about a little bit of a side project. So NASA actually looked for volunteers to help track, so non-NASA individuals, not affiliated with the space program directly, to try to track transmissions from the Orion spacecraft on the 10-day journey. And what they're trying to do is look at a couple things. One, what type of equipment and who's able to actually do this, and is it going to work? Is it effective? If we run into emergency scenarios, how can we manage this? But also, can we look at maybe using more cost-effective and non-special made radio equipment? So again, looking at the amateur radio community to sort of lend a hand. So of those volunteers, there was 34 in total, 4 of which are amateur radio operators selected here to try to do that. So a lot of people with great specialties. So amateur radio, you want a practical use of amateur radio and the skills you're learning? There you go. There's one for you.
I actually saw on the topic of this in the amateur radio Reddit, which tread lightly in the space that is Reddit. A gentleman posting his repurposed. It was essentially a repurposed DirecTV dish with of course, additional SDR receiver attached there. And he was using that to get directional communication on the RTL SDR receiver to listen to some of these transmissions. And I think this is really cool, right? If we have more opportunities for this thing to be out there at deep space distance, there will be more opportunities for us hams here on Earth, who probably will not have the opportunity to fly ever, to experiment with this, because there will be the test bed out there where we can have those transmissions coming back and forth. I have an embarrassing story for you that is very related here. On, I believe it was Saturday or Sunday, I'm sitting here and I see a spike on my VHF band, and I tune over to it, and I get Houston Artemis as the opening thing that I hear as I tune my radio over to this. And I'm like, what the heck? Is this space communication that I'm hearing? And of course, I've got a Comet GP3 on the roof. So I'm thinking that I'm getting some crazy propagation. I don't know what's going on, but I'm stoked, right? Because I'm hearing the crew talk to the ground, and I'm like, what is this? This is awesome. Well, it turns out, of course, that the Central Michigan Emergency Network here had linked up the crew communications to the linked repeater system. And so what I had stumbled across was a repeater up in Lansing, which is not nearby, so it wasn't in my program memory, that I was picking up at super, super light, wasn't coming in strong. And I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. So I was excited. It was a hilariously dumb little story. And after I found out about it, I connected my own radio up and I listened to them for a couple of days here, just absolutely cool to have that level of transparency, being able to hear the communications back and forth. And Rory, I think, has some info on.
Yeah, I was glad that you stumbled across that, because I wasn't looking for it on 2 meters. And actually, back in the space shuttle era, there where we were doing a lot of trips, it was incredibly common for ham radio ground stations to be retransmitting the audio for the public to enjoy the ability of listening on 2 meters, because the general public can either use a scanner or a ham can use their ham radio to listen in on those frequencies. So there's those few weird rules and quirks in of course the ham radio regulations, and one of them, they both have to do with broadcasting. Well, that's something that you are allowed to broadcast. You're allowed to retransmit space transmissions like that, and since they wake the crews up with music, that is the one instance where you are allowed to transmit music over the amateur radio bands. So it was a little nostalgic to me, because I remember as a younger ham, even before I was a ham, in the 90s, I would listen to, it was locally on 14513, a group that's loosely related to the Central Emergency guys. They would broadcast that, and I always wondered, for the longest time I did the same thing. I thought I was hearing it straight from space, and somewhere along the way I learned that it's
okay
wasn't.
to pretend.
But you know what? It's cool. It's exactly right. It's cool to pretend. It's cool to have that opportunity, and I'm glad the Central Michigan guys have spun that up and made good use of their network to play that for everyone's benefit, because it is a benefit to have that.
There's something special about hearing it at FM fidelity through a little tiny speaker on your desk, because it almost sounds authentic coming through that little you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, James, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, speaking of the music, they wake up the crew with music in the morning, and then they give them a special message. So if you haven't heard him, Jim Lovell gave a message when the day they were going to break the record for the deep space. But to give you a little snap of what that looks like here.
eagerly awaiting the chorus.
We'll try again next time.
So I just love that.
They were let down by the ground station.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
man.
even NASA makes mistakes sometimes and leaves them on a cliffhanger there. But I think it's cool that they do that. And if you're listening again in the morning, check out the music that they broadcast for the Artemis crew. The thing though, I'm most excited though to get back to the amateur radio for a second is we know the ISS, which has a amateur radio station on there and the repeater capabilities. They're going to be decommissioning it. I think in 2030 is the current timeline for that to happen, which we have our satellites in space, but the space station's always been just such a cool focal point for the amateur radio group and being able to make a contact with an astronaut, potentially the school group involvement when the astronauts reach down to schools. So it's been a great ambassador for the hobby, and I appreciate everyone that makes that possible. But I'm hoping that this new space interest, getting these amateur radio astronauts out there more and testing some more amateur-related equipment, who knows? Maybe a future Artemis launch, we might be able to talk to them on the moon, and we'll see. Fingers crossed on that one, right? But keep it up. We appreciate you involving us, and that's where I'll leave that.
I think there was some discussion of putting a repeater on the moon, whether it was
That's what we need.
just comical. And I didn't add my comments to it because the internet's exhausting anymore. But I was going to say, well, what are you going to have? A repeater on the moon with people kerchunking all day and all night and nobody actually using the thing? Just like
Nothing more.
our repeaters on ground. That's all it would be.
Yeah.
You gotta have your special directional bow fang.
Well, and then you back in, and then maybe about 10 p.m. you get a couple guys talking about their particular medical problems of the evening, and it would be just as good as a repeater on top of any water tower in any given town. But who knows where we'll go with that.
To comment on the message to the Artemis folks, I thought this was a really nice one, and also sort of an interesting situation. Lovell, before he passed away last year, had recorded something which I was moved by a little bit, and I thought it was a really interesting message. He says, "Welcome to my old neighborhood. When Frank Borman and Bill Andrews and I orbited the moon on Apollo 8, we got humanity's first up-close look at the moon and got a view of the home planet that inspired and united people around the world. I'm proud to pass the torch on to you." And he went on to say to them, and I thought it was killer timing by NASA to drop such a moving piece of commentary. It played extrememely well. I'm sure that the astronauts themselves appreciated hearing it. I hope that was the first time they heard it, because I think that made it move.
I believe it was. The conversation afterwards, which I tuned in as at the end of it. I missed it, so I went back and actually listened to the whole thing. But that was the comments from the crew that was a surprise to them to hear that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It goes to show that, honestly, there was so much forethought put into this particular mission that nothing that we're seeing here today that looks easy was easy at all. And I guess that's kind of what I wanted to sum this whole thing up, right? We've talked a lot about all the things that we've seen. We've had the opportunity to really enjoy some high-definition experience of moon close passes, and I'm looking forward to the future of Artemis 3 and 4, and I hope that we continue to fund this type of forward-looking research into the potential for humanity to move, further into space in the future. So,
yeah. Before we end today's show, just a couple quick notes. They are scheduled for Friday, April 10th, to have a splashdown around 8:07 local time near San Diego. So if you still haven't checked into the Artemis, that would be a really cool time to go and do that. The crew is, as we've said, is live streaming a lot of their stuff up there in space. So definitely check it out. But one last audio clip before we say 73s, because you talk about something that's moving and get you going. A little bit of their pre-launch from the astronauts.
And Integrity Launch Director.
Good air voice, Charlie. PLT.
Thank you, Charlie. This is Victor. We are going for our families.
MS1.
This is Christina. We are going for our teammates.
MS2.
This is Jeremy. We are going for all humanity.
All right, Charlie, your Artemis II crew is go for launch. Full send.
So
I love the
if
full
that
set.
doesn't get you pumped in the world of science, hopefully the next generation and this generation are inspired. But thank you for joining us on episode 16. We'll be back next month. And with that, 73s.
7-3.
7-3, guys.